Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Metal Command podcast. Tony here with you, and today I'm bringing you an interview with Roy Khan of the band Conception. Roy, of course, was an instrumental part in the success of the band Camelot, as he was their singer for quite a long time. And originally, though, Conception was pretty much the band that brought him into the spotlight before joining Camelot, but obviously he is back in that band and doing some great stuff. And he also sang on a song for Ein Lukasen for the Star One album. So with that said, enjoy this interview. I talk a lot about the new Conception reissues, as well as some other great stuff, even some stuff pertaining to the band Camelot and his decision to leave. So with that said, check out the interview and enjoy. I look forward to seeing your comments and what you think about the interview. And of course, if you do like my videos, you can hit subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell to be notified of any videos I do post. Check it out. Thanks for watching. Here's the interview with myself and Roy Khan. It's great to have you on my show yet again. We've talked a few times before, the last couple years. So I'm really excited about this. The one big thing I'm really excited about that finally happened were the reissues of some of these albums. And, people don't have to go on eBay and pay like $80 for a copy of In Your Multitude, So, talk about the reissues you have out, because I think they turned out really great. And, you finally got a lot of these albums back in print again for people.
Yeah, I mean, like we've been waiting to have these albums available for both new and old fans, because they haven't been in print, in a long time. So and they've been, BMG have been sitting on them for a while, and you can't blame them though. They got a huge catalog of bands and albums that they need to take care of. So, but I guess Conception, getting back on track with these last two albums that we did, the EP and the State of Deception LP, eventually, made the difference. So now everything's available again, and they're all remastered, and we're super happy about the result. But actually it was BMG that wanted to all we wanted was get these albums out there, so people could enjoy them, because we're extremely proud of everything we've done from the beginning, and it's just a pity that that people can't get a hold of them until now. But the remaster, BMG approached us and said, hey, we're thinking of remastering these albums, so to get the sound quality a little bit up to date, and just refresh things a little bit, freshen it up, and the result was awesome. Especially the older albums, of course, have a significantly better sound quality, in my opinion, but also flow, actually, which we were already super happy with, production wise and sound wise. If you listen to that album on a really good stereo, you can really tell the difference. So yeah, good thing. Cool.
I would agree with you. And to be honest, I had the original copies of the album. So I actually, when I ended up getting the reissues, I was able to sort of compare how they sounded, because while they were shipping to me, I listened to the albums, which actually prompted me to go find and talk to you, because I was kind of reliving my past, when I was a kid, basically listening to these records. And I will tell you, I agree. There was a significant difference on all of the albums. And one of the things I thought was really cool, you guys re-recorded a version of Roll the Fire, which I thought was great. And what inspired you to do that? Because that's actually, I know that was actually one of the bigger songs off of the album that it was on, but it's one of my favorite songs Conception ever did. And maybe talk about re-recording that.
Well, we just wanted to, I mean, like you said, it's probably one of the most popular songs we ever did. It's been a little bit of a anthem for the band in a way. That song and Silent Crying, the other one that we did, They were both amongst the probably the two top most popular songs we did, and we just wanted to get to redo them with the musicianship that we possess today, and with today's technology, and we just wanted to give it a try, see can we do this song today with same quality, maybe even certain aspects of it could be better than back when we actually did it. And we're super happy with the result. It's got a maturity, and it's got some elements to that now that we've been missing, over the years.
Sure. You always go back and you add little small things that sometimes people will pick up on, sometimes they don't. But you have these small things that you're like, oh, okay, you kind of pick up a little nuance in the song that was sort of slipped in there. And but I thought the re-recordings were really good, and they turned out really well for you. So let's kind of go back. We're going to go back a little bit and talk about each one of these records, briefly, just to give some people some insight on, the time about how they were recorded and when, and what was going on at the time for you guys. But the Last Sunset, I always thought was a pretty, like every first album by most bands, it's going to be a little bit more raw. It's going to be a little more. It's not going to be as refined as the later releases, but it was your first album. And talk about getting the band together and actually doing that album for the first time.
Yeah, well, when I came in, the album was already recorded. The music was, anyways. The band had shifted though from like a more thrashy type sound to more melodic, and they realized that the old singer was maybe not entirely capable of coping with the new material. So they were looking for a new singer, and I came in and pretty much, sang the lines and the lyrics that were already there, except for The Last Sunset, which I wrote together with Tori, the title track.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I probably would tell you that that's probably the least favorite album for me, but again, it's your first record. It has a little more of a, I guess, speed metal vibe to it, in my opinion, compared to the other records. But then, you go on and you go on and record the next album, which to me is probably one of my favorite albums of all time, which is Parallel Minds, which obviously, we were just talking about, some of the songs off of that record. So you go from this more of a speed metal type thing to a more refined, more progressive power metal sound on Parallel Minds. The band, and it was a huge jump as far as the quality of the record, because I think the second album is a lot better than the first. And talk about, getting together with these guys, writing that album, and, what was in your mind at the time, and maybe give us some insight on the making of that record.
Well, yeah, the at this time, already when I joined the band, the Tora as a guitar player and songwriter, and the whole band was developing, real quickly. At that age, when you start out, everything is new and exciting, and I really think that bands tend to develop fast, in early in their careers, and this also went for conception. And I think already when I joined the band, we were, all of us heard that we were onto something that could be quite a bit different from what they had been doing in the past. But we went ahead, and a lot of things happened between The Last Sunset and Parallel Minds too. Like we had a few concerts, not many, just locally, and but that also added something to our whole perception of what this whole thing was about. Because I had never done any gigs before that. Not like that, anyways. And we had several things. So we had a producer, we had a record contract. We were writing the songs from the get-go, all of us, and especially me coming in as the new vocalist with new lyrics and different a different approach as to how to set up a vocal melody.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things in addition to everybody and the band as such, as a unity, being in rapid development, made that whole album way different from The Last Sunset.
Sure.
I can't really put my finger on exactly what it was that I just think it was we're four blokes that met and we clicked together, and we we understood quickly that we had found something that really could be something. We our personalities fit together, our abilities fit together, so
Mm-hmm.
it was a nice match.
Yeah, I'd agree. And your multitude sort of followed through after that. It was sort of kind of, it wasn't the same album, but you still had that same pretty signature sound. And actually that album in Parallel Minds became, what most people consider pretty classic records at this point. I mean, it's crazy to say that, but it's been a very long, those albums came out a long time ago now, even though for me, it seems like they came out a week ago. But they came out quite a long time ago. And talk about In Your Multitude, because when you have an album like Parallel Minds, you obviously have to follow it up with something great. And you did with that album. And maybe let's talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah, the difference between Parallel Minds and In Your Multitude is not as big a leap as between Last Sunset and Parallel Minds, and the next one that came after In Your Multitude, but it has some we added some of the elements that first got us recognized on The Last Sunset, the flamenco guitars, for example, that or the fusion that is presented in a song like A Million Gods.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the most progressive songs that we've done. Progressive in the traditional meaning of the word. I don't know. It's we had found a team. It was pretty much all about doing the same thing again without doing the same thing again. Like we had a good team, and we knew we had something going that was working, and we just went ahead and did our best not to do the same songs again, because that's important for us, not to repeat ourselves. We want to keep whatever it is that is conception, but we also don't want to repeat ourselves.
Right.
So as soon as we hear something that we feel is too similar to something we've done in the past, we're pretty quick at just dismissing it.
Yeah, so you go from those two records to Flow, which was a completely different record, and I'm going to admit to you right now, I think out of those four albums, Flow was a record that when at first I didn't know how to take it, but believe it or not, out of those four albums, it's my favorite one. I think that your vocal performance on that album, by far for me, with the band at that time, it was your best out of those four records. But there was something about that album that just really grabbed me. It had a completely different sound to it, but and still to this day, it's hard to really put it in a category because it doesn't really sound like anything anybody's ever done. And talk about going and writing that record, and in comparison to say the previous two.
Well, at this point, we had a good bit of touring down. We'd done 2 productions And we had the budgets. We were under the same contract, but the budgets increase, with each option that the label has. So this was the biggest budget that we had, that we had that far. And again, we felt that, I guess yeah. I'm not sure how conscious we were about it, but hindsight, I like to think that we felt In Your Multitude was a little bit too similar
Mm-hmm.
to Repel of Minds in a way. We wanted to do something like, really different to make another leap forward, at least in our own heads.
Sure.
And but I also think that Tommy Newton, the producer, came in and worked more thoroughly on that album than what he did on the two other records. But we also felt that we had found the sound. That we as a band felt that there's no record that we had done up to that point that where everybody had been that involved. So everybody felt more ownership to the music and to the songs than ever, to the band itself. But I can't. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it was that made that album that different. I really don't know. I think it was a um, strike of luck too, that we all managed to, the thing is, we were super happy about this album, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, and we thought it was going to be a big hit, but at the same time, we knew that we were struggling. We were fighting the wave of grunge music that had started with Nirvana and all those bands. Well, I've loved a lot of those bands. I really like, but it didn't really help our kind of music, or any type of music that had its roots in the 80s.
Yeah.
But we felt that we had found a really cool middle thing that would work for both fans of our, like, old fans and people that were looking for something new. But for some reason, the reactions to the album were they span from really good to well, this is not exactly what I was expecting after those two previous albums. So we didn't really manage to cater to our old fans, and I guess I'm not sure the label we had at the time had the muscles to work us in the market where we were hoping we could get a share.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that you're competing against like grunge and stuff like that, but then, suddenly 2 or 3 years later, you're in Camelot, and all of a sudden the band sort of takes off with the Fourth Legacy back in, I think it was 2000. So it's kind of crazy how you went from fighting this type of competing with these kinds of bands that were big at the time, and then suddenly 3 years later the Fourth Legacy comes out, and here we go. Camelot starts going up here, and I think that's interesting. Did when you came out with Flow, did that pretty much, was that the beginning of say the band breaking up at the time because of the situation you were in, or was it when you joined Camelot that it sort of just kind of went away for a little while?
Oh, no. Well, when I joined Camelot, we had already put Conception on ice.
Okay.
But although it happened just half a year after we did that, because Thomas read about that, pretty much right away, and was called me not long after that. But no, like I said, when we released, like when we worked on Flow and when we released it, we were extremely happy with it. I'm not sure I've ever been as happy with an album as I was with Flow at the time. And we totally believed in it. And it wasn't until it wasn't until, and we still believe, even though the reviews were, mixed, we still totally believed in it until we were going to do this tour with Stradivarius, and we were kicked off the tour like a week before because everything, we still believed in it, but when we weren't able to go out there and actually present these new songs for our fans that we've been, really looking forward to do, that just did something to us. It sort of, it killed the spirit that had, helped us keep our heads above the water.
Yeah.
Despite all the challenges with the genre not being, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, they kicked you off tour, really?
I don't know who kicked us off, but somebody did. We were told 1 week before the tour that we don't need you, and the tickets have been sold with our name on the billing, and it was just it was awful. And we still don't know why. Maybe it was, I mean, they were on the same record company as us. Maybe the record company didn't believe in us.
Yeah.
Maybe they thought. I have no idea.
That's what I was going to say, because Stradivarius and you guys were, before they went to Nuclear Blast, I mean, you were on the same label, at the time when, with like Episode and Visions and all that. So that's interesting. That's an interesting thing there. You have a crowdfunding campaign. I'm assuming that's still going on. I know you've done some shows and you do have some merchandise for sale to crowdfund for the next album. Are you still going on that campaign, as of right now?
Yeah, I mean, we're I mean, the album, this deluxe box is out now. I mean, it is just about to be released now, and I mean, the crowdfunding campaign is still on, but we have I mean, we're working on getting everything out. There's such a backlog on vinyl, for example. It's been a stressful. These we haven't been lucky, exactly. Let's put it that way. I mean, the first crowdfunding campaign was hit by the Pledge Music bankruptcy. So we had to.
I forgot about that.
And then we did the crowdfunding campaign for the album State of Deception, and then the whole world shut down like 2 weeks before we released it. So we had to postpone our tour, which is going to be, the bulk of it is going to take place next year, spring 2023. But everything being shifted and delayed 2-3 years. And of course it hurt, the focus was, it was hard to do our thing right, with all these things happening, bigger things that of course preoccupied people's attention, minds. It's been rough. But we're still here, and we still love what we're doing, and I mean, we still feel lucky that we've been able to do these albums, and we're extremely proud of them and happy with the result. It's just that business things could have laid out a little bit more nicely for us. We feel we deserve that, but things are what they are. And there are people struggling more than we are. There's a lot of people in this business now that are, they're filing for bankruptcy, and they're, I mean,
it's like, people didn't tour, and now everybody's trying to tour at the same time. And you have, from what I've seen, instead of competing against one other tour, maybe in that city, you have like 10, and club owners are very reluctant to put up money.
Everything is so expensive. Like, everything goes up.
Yeah.
Staff, buses, equipment. Yeah.
Or you can't find any of it. Like,
no, that's true. They're short.
Let's say if you want to spend the money, you can't find a bus. You can't find people to work it. So that's the other obstacle people don't realize, is that, the cost of stuff went up, But
Mhm.
there was a band that came here, for example. They spent like months just even locating one tour bus to be able to tour here. I mean, that's
Yeah,
how crazy
it's
it is.
crazy. It's crazy. And I just hope everything is going to be somewhat okay again. But I think a lot of people have abandoned the business. A lot of like technicians and people working in the industry. They've
Yeah,
figured out, hey, maybe a 9 to 5 job is not that bad after all.
I
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
So when you came back, when Conception basically came back, what was the reception like for you at first? Because the band had been gone for a long time and you had the EP come out and you were in Camelot for a long time, then kind of took a break from releasing records for a little while and, came back with the EP. Talk
Mhm.
about what it was like coming back as a band again. And when you guys got back together, was it awkward or was it like you guys never stopped playing together? You just got into a room and, it just happened like it did, say 20 years ago.
Well, but between us and the band, that was not a big deal. I mean, we've kept in touch all along, and we even did some rehearsals for fun, and we had these 3 gigs in 2005 or six, whenever it was, in connection with this. We did Pro Power in the US, but the whole thing was in connection with a anniversary thing for well-known metal magazine here in Norway.
Mhm.
Uh, and Tora and myself, we even stayed in a house together with a couple of other people, like in a community thing in Oslo for a couple of years. So while we were doing Ark and Camelot, we still made songs, and I mean, some of these songs, like "Waywardly Broken," for example, was actually started uh, um, at that time. Um, but no, that was not awkward at all. But getting back into the business, that was different for all of us because we hadn't really done anything serious in a few years. So we were extremely nervous before we went on stage. And we were nervous about what the feedback would be when we launched the first crowdfunding campaign.
Sure.
But I mean, we pretty fast understood that this was something that was going to be well welcomed. People were really grateful, and it was super heartwarming to see how people responded to me and us coming back as a band.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was really cool as well. And, I had become so used to you being in Camelot at the time that, I almost had forgotten for a while. I forgot Conception even existed. And then when you came back and had the EP, and I'm like, man, these guys are still putting out some pretty cool stuff. And some of the newer music is a little more progressive. It's
Mm-hmm.
got a lot more, the progressive elements in it, there's a lot more of that
Mm-hmm.
than there was, say, on the previous albums. And did the songs just come out like that, or was it intended? And the album and obviously the EP sort of had. I mean, there are a lot of times in these tracks where I would listen to them and. They would go a completely different way than I was expecting, which I think is really cool. And talk about the songwriting, for for the album and the EP.
Mm-hmm. Well, some of these songs were basically all of these songs are actually written in the period between the bulk of them, anyways, between 2016 and 2019, I would say. So when we did the first crowdfunding campaign, most of the material for both of these releases was already written.
Sure.
So we already knew there was going to be like a full album at some point, not too far from the release of the EP. But I guess the main difference between how the band wrote songs in the past and now is that since Tori lives in Sweden, in Stockholm, and I live in a different place from the two other guys here in Norway. We don't rehearse like we used to. We like back in the day, we rehearsed 5, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
I didn't, but the other guys did. I came in, not that often, but still, we rehearsed quite a bit. And a lot of the music was, shaped during rehearsals. Like Tor would very often have a basic structure or a full song for that matter, or an idea, and then everything would be taken into the rehearsal room and worked on further there. Now this time around, Tor still is the prime engine in this band, but we would. If he had like an idea for a song, we'd take it to a cabin. We just locked ourselves in for like 10 days with computers and distractions, and worked on the songs together, in the cabin. So that was the difference. We've been working on computers, making the songs, sketching them out, and then giving them to the other guys after that.
Right.
And I mean, some songs are. I would say that it's like we take songs and we break some songs we break down, like we will try them out and we'll break them down again and again until we're happy, and we don't really think and analyze along the way. And when we make songs, we just record, and then we try to pick out stuff from the quick recordings or jams, and then we put them together, and then we start working on the details.
Yeah, sure. Now, what was it like for you going from a band like Conception and then going to pretty much a power metal band in the US like Camelot? Like what were some of the differences for you to go from one, because they're both completely different bands, and you went from one style of music in a sense to a much different one. And talk about the transition to that, because I believe Siege Perilous was the first album you sang on with them, and maybe talk about what it was like for you to go from Conception to Camelot.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was cool. First of all, it was cool to I've never been to the US before, so it was cool to be able to experience an entirely new continent, and it was cool to meet up with Thomas and the other guys in Camelot. And Camelot was different, but it wasn't that different. I mean, it's still the same genre. It's still the same. It's the same, lineup. It's the same. We have many of the same inspiration sources, so it's not that different. But at least when I came in, the way Camelot wrote songs it was way more progressive, I would say, with awkward or the song structures were very different from how we did it in Conception. So that's probably one of the differences that me coming into the band actually made. But everything happened so fast. I had just quit Conception, or we had just put the band on ice, and just a couple of months after that, Thomas calls me and wonders if I'm going to be able to help them out with the vocals on this album that they've been recording. And the situation was kind of the same as when I joined Conception, with Last Sunset. I came in and everything was written. I sang lyrics and lines that had been written by other people. And I think we did this one song, Thomas and me together, which ended up as a bonus track in Japan. It's called One Day. And during the writing of that song, we kind of figured out that we had a thing going that could be worth exploring. So we started talking about going
Sure.
for a whole brand new album. Yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would say that the way we wrote songs in Thomas and I wrote songs is more similar to how we do songs today with conception. But Tor is definitely the prime engine in the songwriting.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. Then when you were in Camelot, Siege Perilous to Fourth Legacy, there was a huge difference between those albums, and the popularity of the band started going way up when Fourth
Mhm.
Legacy came out. And what was the difference between those two albums? I mean, I think Fourth Legacy is a much better record. It's got better
Mhm.
writing, production, et cetera, et cetera. But the band really caught on. I remember getting the promo for Fourth Legacy, and I was blown away by that record. I'm like, wow. I'm like, these guys completely, these guys completely did a 180 from what they were doing, and they just went up. They went up a few levels. And talk about that transition for you.
Well, it was pretty much the same as between Blood Sunset and Parallel Minds for Conception. We had like I came in as a new singer, with everything that comes with that
Sure.
new type of lyrics. There's a lot of music in lyrics, by the way. Me writing melody lines. I also wrote a lot of these songs together with Thomas. And we had Casey coming in as a new drummer. We had uh, Sasha Peth and Miro on orchestrations. So I mean, all those things all together was and also we had a pretty clear idea about what it was going to be, what our music was going to be like.
Sure.
And of course, with all these new people coming in, the ideas that you can allow yourself to have will be different because you have all these new people, and all of a sudden you can imagine things that you in the past could not do because there were limitations.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of many things, but I think I covered most of it there.
Was it difficult for you to leave the band? And then when you look, I mean, that decision, it seems like it happened yesterday, but it's been quite a long time when you left. And I don't know, almost based on just the whole vibe, I get it. You seem to be a lot more at ease and a lot happier these days, as far as just being content with everything, with conception and stuff like that. But,
Mhm.
was it hard to leave Camelot at the time? And how do you look at that decision years later?
Well, first question first. Was it hard? Yes and no. I mean, it was hard in the sense that that the Camelot at that point was everything I had dreamt of since I was a little kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had there was good money. We had great success, and the band was still going up. And Yeah, I mean, but I was not in a good place personally. Like mentally, I was not in a good place
Okay.
for many reasons. So it wasn't really that hard to make that decision. And there were things that happened at that time that were so awkward that it's I don't think I'm gonna start. I don't want to say too much about that because it's a long story. But there was things that happened that made that decision very simple to me.
Sure.
And although there were times where there were times where after that when I was bitter and oh man, if only. But it was a very good choice. It was the only choice I could make. I don't think I would have been alive today if I
Yeah.
hadn't made the choice. So.
Oh, I understand where you're coming from. It's like you look back, at first, you have to make a hard decision. And then, years later, you think about it, you think about how life turns out after, a long time.
Mhm.
And after time goes by, essentially. And then you realize, okay, I'm really glad I made that decision, because I've been there. I get it. I've had to make decisions about things that at the time were difficult, and you have circumstances that you're like, man, I have to do this. And then you like a year later, you're always like, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. But then you go 9-10 years later, you're like, yeah, as much as I hated to do it, I'm glad I did it. And it happens. I mean, I get it completely.
There hasn't been one time that I've regretted it though, because
Okay.
I really could not have done things differently,
Sure.
and I know that in my heart. So, and I always knew that. So it was never. But there's still room for bitterness, although you have to make decisions
Yeah.
that you have to make.
Yeah. And I think, too, with Conception, I think Conception's done, the music has progressed to a point where it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's so much different now than what you were doing in Camelot, what you were doing on the earlier records. You get to a point too, where musically as a musician, you're like, because Camelot has their own kind of sound, and they don't really stray that much from it, to be honest. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying they don't do that. And Conception, it's kind of like you don't have any limitations. You just pretty much can do whatever you want, because people expect you to do that. They don't, I'll give you an example. And I heard the EP, I loved it. But then when the album came out, I went into it like I'm expecting the unexpected. And that's where that's where I go with you guys now. Every time if you announce, hey, we're going to write a new album, it's like, I'm expecting the unexpected. I'm expecting the album to have a sound to it that, that's not going to be like what other people are doing. And I think at this point, as a musician, I think that's the place you're at. And I think that's great, actually.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, that's how we look at it ourselves too. Like, I mean, we know that business wise is not necessarily the smartest thing to do. Like, to
Sure.
strive not to repeat yourself, because we actually, that we put quite a bit of effort into that idea, not repeating ourselves. And whereas other bands actually, just really stick to a formula that kind of, makes sense. But and we it might be a little bit egoistic, but we really make music for ourselves first and foremost. We want to make sure that this is music that we can like ourselves, and that it can be something that we can look back upon and be proud of it when we're older. But it's really not. It sounds like more of a conscious thing than what it actually is, because it comes kind of natural to us to work that way. It's like it's not like we sit and analyze and go through the songs and, oh no, that one sounds too much like that song, or no, we've done that before. It just we just weed out ideas that we find generic or sounding like something we've done in the past instantly when we come up with them, and so they're never really part of the whole process.
Yeah, if I go back and look at your discography, aside from maybe In Your Multitude being a little bit more of a polished version of Parallel Minds, none of your albums really sound the same. They're all different. I think the band's evolution really went into full tilt, as we say, on Flow. I think when Flow came out, and when you put that album out, it really sort of started that whole trend of, hey, I don't know where I expect these songs to go one way, but they go another, and you really evolved on that album. I like to stress that, because that is where I think the turning point for the band was on that record, to almost what you're doing now.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that was when we realized that, if we really do what we feel in our hearts, and that this is the result, and we're going to be very happy about it. And I think we realized that with more than any time prior to that, anyways, with Flow.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously there are other things with the new albums that are like for example, we have the orchestral element now that is way more elaborate than what it was in the past. I'm not even sure we had much of that in the past. Um, and but it's I really think that you're right about that. That flow was a turning point in that. Yeah.
I agree. Well, I have to ask you this because you worked with probably one of my favorite musicians ever. You worked with Ian Lukazin on the Star One stuff. And
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, that guy, to me, he is probably one of my favorite people as far as this an overall musician goes. And what was it like working with him? Because I thought your performance on that album this year was great, and you really got to work with a guy that, in my opinion, never really gets as much credit as he should for the awesome songwriting he does. So talk about working with him. I'm curious because every person that has ever worked with him always has a different viewpoint or a story about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's such a. I mean, first of all, he's a really wonderful human being. He's so super polite and nice, and he treats you. He simply treats you very nicely. And the thing is about the history with me and Arjen goes a little bit farther back because I was supposed to be on an Arion album back in the day with when at about the time when I did the Scarecrow album with Avantasia. But I had lost my voice partially after a US tour. And I don't know what it was, but I had some sort of virus on my chords, and I just could not hit high notes without just cracking up in a weird way.
I've been there. Trust me. I know how awful that is. Oh my God. Yeah.
And it lasted. I just could not get over it. And I barely managed to do the Avantasia album, but that was only one song. And Arjen wanted me to do like several songs at the time, and I just had to tell him that sorry, but this ain't gonna work. But it felt awkward because I had just done the Avantasia thing, and that came out, and it was in the news, and then I turned him down, so he might have been a bit I don't know what he thought about that, but anyways, and I felt bad about it, but he came back to me now after all these years when he saw that I was out with Conception again, and yeah, I mean, great songwriter, and I mean his talent speaks for itself. He's got like plenty of songs and albums out, and he has the genre's best artists, playing on his albums, and the cool thing about him is he really allows you to just do your thing. Yeah. Like he'll he understands that what makes you is important for the signature, right? So
yeah. Yeah, I think it was great. And I didn't know about the Arion thing, obviously. That sucks. I can tell you from someone that's gone through that same thing that you were just talking about. We get a virus and you just can't hit a high note. That whole I hate it. It's happened to me once and it just lingers. Like it doesn't stop. It's not like it stops in a week. It took months for me to recover from that. It's never happened since, but I didn't have my voice for almost 2 years because of it. I'll be honest with you. It really was that bad. I almost had to relearn to sing.
Wow.
I don't know if you had to do that or not, but with me, it definitely was not a fun ordeal per se.
No, I mean, it stuck with me for like a half year or so.
Yeah.
It was right when I was going to do these 2 guest appearances with Avantasia and Aaron, and I just had to turn one of them down.
Yeah.
But no. I mean, I'm not sure. I didn't feel I had to relearn how to sing, but it was just it just slowly came back to me.
Yeah. So talk about Avantasia. you did work with Toby. Obviously, him and Ian Lukasner are kind of two different people. And what was it like working with him? When you did some guest stuff for them as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I already knew Tobias from from working at the studio of Sasha's down in Germany.
Yeah.
But he had already asked me to do like a couple of small things. I don't think I was even. I didn't even want credit for that, but like little things on the album since I was there and he was there, and we hung out a little bit in Germany in connection with being both of us being there. And we also I think we did a tour or two with Ed Guy, but but it's a long time ago, but I remember getting the files and I was probably more focused on just getting my shit down, at all, because I was struggling hard to get to get those lines down for Anastasia too. So, I mean, Tobias is a great songwriter, and obviously he also has a really good thing going. I mean, the success of these guys' projects is evidence, for itself.
It's not easy to write songs for so many different singers either.
No, that too.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, I have to tell you, I thank you for your time. I think that I'm really glad that you finally have put out these new conception, these reissues, a long time coming, and they sound great. So credit to you, credit to them, or you guys, whoever had a hand in it. They definitely did a great job of putting these albums out and remastering them. It was really nice to hear after so long. It's well overdue. Let's put it that way. And I can't wait. Before we head off here, are you writing for another conception album at this point?
Yeah, well, Tor sent me, or he sent us an idea for a new song like a couple of days ago. So I mean, and we're musicians, so and creative people, so we write stuff all the time. But what is going to be and when and all that, we don't know. But yeah, I mean, there will be something at some point for sure.
That is awesome. Well, any last words for any of the fans that'll check this out?
Just thanks for being there. Thanks for making this possible for us, and really hope to see you guys out there, live, somewhere at some point.
Gotcha. Well, everybody, I will have a link in the show notes to the crowdfunding campaign for you guys. Definitely something to check out, and definitely some really cool merchandise to be able to order for that. Some really cool stuff. The box set looks really cool, and Roy, I appreciate you coming on. I really do.
My pleasure. Really cool.